Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. I'm going to be talking about the difference or the comparison between the spiritual gifts of the Bible and psychic gifts. What are they, and are they any different? And we'll be sharing a tale of two brothers that passed over, a tale from the other side. I'll be sharing some clairaudience tips on how to develop your gift of clear hearing in the psychic world. The spiritual abilities of people living or passed into the next world are natural parts of us. It's really nothing new. It's not related to a religious viewpoint per se. I have people that occasionally come to me and are afraid that they're violating their religion to hear from people that they love or to seek advice or counsel. They tell me that they don't know if they believe in what I do, but it's really not a matter of faith. Jesus talked to dead people, Moses and Elias, and he appeared to his disciples after death and ate and talked with them and then transfigured once again into light. He said that these things and greater shall ye do. It tells us that what we consider supernatural abilities are actually just spiritual gifts that we should each desire. Each of us has the ability to develop. These abilities have existed since the dawn of time, and they're prevalent in all cultures, all religions, and all nations. They're a human phenomenon. When we come into this world, we are fully equipped as souls. We're free to make our own path in this world. We have telepathy as a natural language, which is mind-to-mind communication, the connection of emotion and to the souls of others. We come in fully capable of unconditional love because that's our natural expression. It's the expression of the divine through us. And we have a natural ability to let the healing energy of our source flow through us to heal the lives of others and to heal ourselves. And we're empathic. We're able to sense the feelings and emotions of others. These things are a given. We know, we sense, we feel, we hear, we see. But upon entry to the world, maybe because of the shock of condensing our spirits into a physical form, compressing ourselves into the dense crystalline expression of light from whence we came, we begin to forget who we are. And that clause is part of our life contract, the agreement that we've signed that we will, for the most part, forget our celestial identities and surrender them so that we can immerse ourselves like an undercover agent into the mission and life that we've chosen for ourselves. Our access point, which is the portal of our astrological timing, imbues us with the characteristics that we need in order to experience this intense, often challenging, and yet oddly beautiful dimension that we call the physical plane. But as if the entry shock isn't enough, we have to adapt completely to a different way of communication. Words are the language of the earth instead of emotions. And telepathy and emotions are the language of the soul. To top it off, our efforts to connect to others within these limited bodies that we operate create a sense of separateness for us. And we really long for that sense of freedom of connection that we had in the etheric realm. We do our best to love and to heal the pain that we see in others. But an abrupt realization happens at some point, usually in childhood, and that is that not everyone responds as expected to our natural, innate, subtle arts. So we start feeling rejected and are sometimes mistreated or abused at the hands of those that are closest to us at a physical level or a mental or emotional level. Suffice it to say, for most of us, our spiritual nature atrophies and the amnesia of who we are truly sets in. In the midst of all this, as we grow and mature in this physical world, we often feel like we're missing something, or we seek a new way to express the higher parts of ourselves. And the good news is that you can reclaim your spiritual abilities. You can operate as a spiritual being in a physical body. Everyone is psychic, and everyone has the capacity to develop their communication with those beyond. Some disciplines say that everyone's psychic, but not everyone's a medium. I don't adhere to that philosophy because I've witnessed the development of people that never would have considered themselves to be a medium to the point where they're very clear in their communication with those on the other side. And for some, that comes pretty easily. And for others, because of the traumas in their lives and the need to focus on what's going on in their life at the moment, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But there is a good news, and that is that intuition is never lost. We always have our internal guidance system. We might be aware that we have it. We might be very in tune with our gut, or we might even joke that we've got it, but we don't listen. But all of us know it's there. Intuition follows a continuum, and it graduates from intuition to psychic ability and on into mediumship. The point that intuition becomes psychic ability is the point that you ask yourself, how did I know that? How did I know to slow down, to not go on, to turn left instead of right? How did I know that that was so-and-so on the phone or that so-and-so just passed? Well, when intuition has graduated into mediumship, that's when the question of how did I know gets answered. That was your grandmother keeping you safe. That was your angel, specifically your guardian angel, keeping you in your life contract because it wasn't your time, and so on. Mediumship is one of the gifts that is talked about in the Bible. In the New Testament, mediumship is referred to as the discerning of spirits. It's the ability to sense, identify, classify, and describe the spirits of those who have passed, spiritual guides, angels, and other beings that are not commonly sensed or seen by the average person. On the intuitive continuum that I referred to earlier, intuition is the gift of knowledge. We just know. And psychic ability is the section of the spectrum where we ask ourselves, how did we know? That's the biblical gift of wisdom, so that when we do or say things, they just sort of seem, well, wise, and wiser than we would have been on our own. So intuition is knowledge, the gift of knowledge. Psychic ability is the gift of wisdom. And mediumship is the discerning of spirits. There are more gifts that are mentioned. There's the laying on of hands, and that is more contemporarily known as energy work or energy healing. Prophecy is the telling of future events, and now the term is fortune telling, although I definitely prefer the word prophecy, just because fortune telling sounds kind of creepy, but prophecy doesn't. Tongues and interpretation are gifts also mentioned. Those are simply channeling. Speaking in tongues is channeling in the native language of men and angels, and the interpretation of tongues is channeling in the language of the hearer. There's also the interpretation of dreams that's mentioned throughout the Bible, and it's still called dream interpretation. It's all in the nomenclature. Today's terminology is quite a bit different than that of the past. But what they're referring to hasn't changed. The gifts are the same. And these gifts are to be shared in love, for love is the highest vibration. It's the greatest gift of all. Spiritual gifts are the abilities that we have as spirits, spirits living in the physical world, spiritual beings living in a physical existence. They aren't Christian talents exclusively, just because they're mentioned in the Bible. They belong to all of us, to all of humanity. And they are older, really much older than the dawn of time or the creation of the earth, because they're parts of our eternal being, an expression of the divine source. They make our lives and the lives of others so much better. I wonder, what are your gifts? Maybe you should find out and start remembering who you truly are, because you are truly marvelous. And that's from a medium's perspective. The life contract is something that each of us as a soul comes to before we enter the physical plane. As we extend ourselves from the source and take on a physical body, there are certain rules of play down here. There are things that affect us that don't necessarily affect us in other dimensions, gravity, for instance. We're given an entourage to come into this dimension and to help us. We're not alone. You know that adage, born alone and we die alone. What a horrible thing, and so not true, because we are never alone. Actually, it has to do with our ability to be aware of those that are around us, but we are never, never alone. Our life contract determines the span of time that we're given here on Earth. And as I mentioned earlier, we do sometimes forget all or most of our remembrances of our past existence, past lives and between lives and other dimensions that we've experienced, because we're here and present in this time. And we are protected, though. We have several guides and angels that come in with us. Our guardian angel is specific, and we might even have more than one. I'm aware of 3 that I have, not because I'm important, but because I guess I live kind of a risky existence sometimes. I guess I needed more help than others, so maybe I'm the physically, dimensionally challenged or something. But we do have plenty of people around us to help keep us safe until it is our time. I think the life contract is an opportunity to complete our goals, but it does have a specific expiration time. We may have options within the contract when we're in our physical life to make a choice about whether we extend that time. We might be rewarded with extra years. I went through actually almost 20 years of, I guess you could call it hellish existence in one way. It was just very challenging in the physical world. And my guides and angels told me I'd been granted an extra 10 years. What's funny is from that time, people started to think I was 10 years younger than I was. Bonus! I believe that when someone is speaking in tongues, that it absolutely is authentic. It might not be of particular use to the left brain awareness of the hearers because they don't understand what it is without the interpretation that comes along with that or can be given by another party if the first person is not adept at both those gifts. But it is the language of men and angels, according to the Bible. That's what they say. The tongues of men and angels. And when someone is speaking in tongues, the Spirit of God, the divine source, is flowing through them. Their guides and angels are speaking through them. And so sometimes we hit situations in our life that are just beyond our ability to bear or to express, or we may be at odds about how do we handle that particular situation. And channeling or speaking in tongues can address those problems at a high soul level, whereas we always are thinking about our physical reality. But it's a very powerful tool for getting things done and for speaking things that maybe we would have trouble understanding or believing, but still being able to have the energy flow to the situation to remedy that. People, as I said, have the ability to develop their psychic and mediumship skills and intuitive gifts. I work with individuals one-on-one. I do offer some local workshops, but those are a monthly thing and just for local people here in Roanoke that have an ability to come to my offices. I do one-on-one tutoring with clients. I use SKYPE for that. I've had some client in Canada and one in Connecticut and a few more recently locally, and hope to have some more. And we just work specifically on whatever aspect of development you're most interested in. We work with psychometry, we work with telepathy, learning who your guides are, learning to channel, learning the nuts and bolts of mediumship, specifically evidentiary mediumship, proving that you're talking to someone, not just making things up. How do you deepen your connection so that you can get that type of information? They can find that information on my website. Today, I wanted to share the story of two brothers in our Tales from the Other Side. I think of the contacts that I experience with the people that have crossed over as a sacred thing because of the depth of emotion that they and my clients feel. It's really my highest honor to be trusted enough to be allowed into their most intimate world of grief. Grief is suffered on both sides of the veil. We don't often think about that, but when a person crosses over and leaves their physical body behind, that departure can really evoke some strong emotions. And of course, for each soul, it's different. Every transition experience is highly unique. We're not always greeted by loved ones or ascended masters or our angels. Those loving energies are always there for us, but our experience is carefully crafted to fit perfectly to our state of mind at the time of our passing. I had a woman come to me as a referral from her son and daughter, and she came to me. She was elderly, I would say mid-80s. I was bringing through different people, and she was acknowledging them, and she just got agitated, and she said, "But I want to talk to my sons." And I thought, oh, how sad that she lost two sons. So I started to tap into the first. And as I did, I sensed that he had taken his own life. And I asked her, "Did your son choose to take his own life?" And she burst into tears. And she said, yes, he did. I'll share in a minute what his experience was like on the other side. But we got to the second son, and I sensed that he too had taken his own life. And I'm thinking, statistically, what are the chances? But I had to ask her because it's what I got. And yes, he had also taken his life. She wanted to know, as we often do when we lose someone, how are they? What's going on? Can they hear me? How are they doing? The first son was more of a family man, very conservative, good guy, in the sense of taking care of responsibilities, etc. And he had expressed at the beginning when he came through his remorse at leaving behind some of his family members. He started talking about how he was working toward improving his psychological base, because we, of course, if it's mind-to-mind communication, we carry our awareness and our minds with us, not just our memories, because we do take those with us when we go to the other side, but an awareness of us as a soul and where we stand in the midst of the universe. And he wanted to be better, so he was taking some kind of classes to understand some of the nuances of successful living. Funny to think about learning successful living techniques on the other side, but he was learning how to better live and was very dedicated in his studies. The other son came through, and he was just, his spirit was like zooming around the room, like whoosh, whoosh. And I said, wow, I said, he is like, I don't know, ADHD. He is just everywhere. And I think he would have liked fast women and fast cars. And it came out of my mouth. I thought, oh, Lord. But anyway, she agreed. She started to laugh, in fact. She said, yes, he did. He was always on the go. And he actually had ADHD. So I tapped back in with him, and he would just barely stand still for a second. He had no interest at all in his spiritual development. He was just testing the boundaries of what he could do out of body, which was travel really, really fast. So he was zooming around and experiencing different dimensions and seeing how fast he could go from here to there and just enjoying the freedom and the liberty of being out of his body. And then she asked me, how about their father? And the father appeared to me, and he was standing kind of awkwardly in front of the two guys. And I explained that to her. but he had reached out his hand and placed it on the shoulder of the one that was trying to better themselves and doing his best to lend support. And she said that that was characteristic of their relationship, that they had an uneasiness between them. And she asked about him and the other son, and I said, he's just standing back, just shaking his head. It's like he has no connection at all to that son. And she said again that that was how it had been for them. That's how their relationships were. No one was enforcing any particular dogma, doctrine, or experience on these boys or men, because they were both grown men. Hearing of how they were doing and knowing how they individually and typical to their characters were responding to their experience, I believe gave their mother some comfort. And that's a tale from the other side. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about clairaudience. We'll be doing clairvoyance in another upcoming episode. Clairaudience is defined by a couple of different dictionaries to be the power or faculty of hearing something not present to the ear, but regarded as having objective reality. Another definition was the power to hear sounds that are said to exist beyond the reach of ordinary experience or capacity, as in the voices of the dead. And clairaudience by itself actually means clear hearing. It could be considered psychic hearing. It's one of the major ways for us to receive psychic information. We have clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairsentience, clear feeling, clairaugustus, which I always pronounce poorly, clear smelling or tasting, claircognizance, clear knowing. Clairaudience is a way of receiving intuitive messages without using the physical ears. And I know that kind of sounds weird, so think of clairvoyance as inner hearing. For example, you might suddenly hear that little voice inside of you that says, go right, go left, or stop. When a highly sensitive person, like a psychic or medium, is clairaudient, they're able to hear things that others can't, such as spirit voices, sounds, even music. And these things become the evidence that we give our clients. Sometimes you can hear the voice as if it's your own voice. Sometimes it sounds like you're reading to yourself. Sometimes you'll hear it in the actual voice of the spirit that they had when they're living. I had a reading just the other day, and her name was Mary, but she wanted me to pronounce it for her sitter, Mary. She's very specific about the pronunciation. And when I gave it, the woman confirmed that that was the way that it would have been pronounced in their family. Clairaudient messages are usually heard internally. If you're hearing things outside yourself, it could be that you're hearing direct voice of spirit, because spirit can actually manifest itself physically. And in that case, it's not the gift of clairaudience, it's just faculty of hearing a direct voice from spirit. There are those that suffer schizophrenia or psychosis. I have a friend who is psychotic as part of her clinical diagnosis, but she's also clairaudient. And I asked her, I said, well, can you tell the difference? And she's like, absolutely. She says that when she hears things psychotically, they happen outside of her auric field. But when she hears things clairaudiently, she hears them within her auric field, and she can actually discriminate and differentiate the voices that she hears from spirit from those that she hears in her gift. Spirit versus her illness. So I wanted to say that there are a couple of different ways that you can develop your clairaudience. The first might be to set yourself in a state of meditation. And normally in meditation, well, I don't know what's normal for other people. I tend to journey during my meditations, but some people are doing a form of meditation where you're clearing your mind and trying to let go of distractions. This is actually the opposite approach. I was taught this one actually at Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Science in England, and I liked it, so I thought I'd share it with our listeners. It's a meditation where, on purpose, You listen to every nuance of every sound that you can possibly pick up around you for an extended time while you meditate. And that will actually enhance your clairaudience. It's kind of a backwards way by listening to the physical to be able to hear the spiritual, but it does work. There's another exercise that was shared with me. I want to clarify a little detail about that. This one is basically you would write the name of the presidents onto a square of paper, like one on each one, or you can go online and print out ready-made flashcards. If you Google around a bit, you can find some. You would hold the card with your eyes shut or folded or reversed so you can't tell, and listen for the names. Now, the caveat to that is that when you are touching something that has the written name of someone on it, particularly if you're in the presence of someone who wants to connect with them, I don't know if people want to connect with dead presidents unless they're in the form of greenbacks these days. I find it interesting to talk to pretty much anyone. But anyway, if they will focus on that, there are different ways of connecting. One is clairaudience, where you start to hear through your guides or through a spirit the name that's written on that paper or printed on that paper. Another way to connect would be telepathy, which is that mind-to-mind connection. If anyone has ever been to maybe a message service where they have billets, which are little pieces of paper, and you write the names of someone and a question on that, this would be a possible way to connect, which would be telepathically to the person that wrote it, or it could be psychometric in terms of picking it up through touch. There are different ways. It can range psychometry, telepathy, or be full-on mediumship. And you usually know if somebody gives you a name that's not written on the paper that you do recognize that you've hit gold there. It's the real deal there. So those are just some ways that we can work on developing our hearing. A lot of us are working on our psychic awakening and being able to distinguish between intuitive messages and your thoughts comes easier after time. As you develop your gift, the specifics and details that come to you can be pretty exciting. You have to achieve a certain frequency or a certain resonance in order to be receptive to truth. Truth vibrates at the vibration very close to love. So fear and worry, of course, are a different vibration, and two different resonances cannot coexist simultaneously. So when we try to hear about ourselves, becoming neutral can be difficult. What I meant by intuition not being left behind or lost is that it is always there for us to rediscover. It's always an innate part of us and always something that can be developed. But all of us get to points where we become the deer frozen in the headlights and don't seem to know how to move forward. That is this week's psychic development exercise, and we've enjoyed the show. I hope you have as well in our listening audience. And remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing. You can find me at mediumtracylockwood.com. Thank you for listening.